I forgot to mention like a big point that I wanted to make in my previous video to this one. It doesn't matter because like the point still stands, but it's just that people don't care about most things, and I can actually see what has happened based on, once again, my influence, educating myself. Aside from being red-pilled on the world and not taking too much cynicism towards it, I have to say that people don't care because they're taught to not care, really, by what Jordan Peterson claims is postmodernist propaganda. It's a nihilistic kind of teaching towards kids nowadays, really, that it's just wrong. It's taught in schools and it's taught in what would you call it, entertainment and general social culture. And so people don't seem to want to do anything about their situations, other than if they're having a bad time, they'll complain about it or they'll blame it on some kind of oppressive system instead of taking responsibility for their own actions. I mean, obviously, not all of the time is every problem that you're facing your own fault, but there are situations where, like almost all the time, most situations where complaining about it isn't going to fix it. And blaming your problem on someone else and then trying to destroy this person, to destroy other people or attack them. For example, if you say, let's for example's sake, say if you're a feminist and you say all of your problems would be solved if men weren't in power and if women were in power instead. So then you just make it your entire objective to sort of destroy men, criticize men, and just hate on men, or spread around sort of propaganda that encourages other people to think like you and say that the world needs less men, or that you would genuinely be qualified to be in a position of power if it weren't for the fact that men stopped you from being there, and not take any interest in looking at whether it's because you failed academically or because you weren't given. If it was genuinely because you weren't given opportunities, then that's fair enough, because you can say people should be given equal opportunities but just not equal outcomes, as in like you can't just be given a high ranking role. You can be given the opportunity to apply for that role, but if you're not smart enough, not qualified enough for it, then you don't want to do it. It's like you don't want somebody who's a bad plumber to do your plumbing because the pipes will burst. So that's just the other end of what I'm saying is, you, like on the most simple level, you want someone who can do it well, so that things don't go wrong. And a lot of the time, people who just are of a different gender or ethnic group won't do it right just because they're from a different group. But that's besides the point, because once again, that's not even getting back to the main problem of what I was trying to address, which is that people in general don't care about success. They don't care about trying to be good people. And once again, Jordan Peterson opened my eyes on this when I thought, for a long time, that there was no such thing as good and evil. And you can definitely make a case to say that there isn't. But, physically, there's not physically, measurably, something that you can say good and evil, because they're kind of just things that we've defined onto the world around us. But having those definitions doesn't mean that you should just ignore them. You shouldn't just ignore the fact that good and evil are, let's say, social constructs, because they do still affect you massively, relative to your own experience and relative to other people's experiences. Doing the right thing, being a positive influence on people around you, and just not being an asshole does matter. You say, oh, it doesn't matter because I'm going to die someday. It's like, well, up until the point where you do die, the people in the society around you don't want you to be an asshole. If everybody didn't care, there would be complete chaos. The world would break down. And then some people want that, and some people think that that's a good thing. But a lot of people don't want that to happen. So it really comes down to a battle of there being people who care about the world and want good things to happen. You can split that group into people who, into two groups of people. The very like passionate people on both sides of the spectrum, like conservatives versus the opposite of that, I don't know, liberalism, left wing versus right wing, people who care and have ideas and a vision and a way that they want things to be, the people who care. And you've got the people who just don't care at all. So the people who want things to be good, people who don't care at all, and then people who want things to be bad. And it seems like there's an increasing number of people who either don't care or want things to be bad. So they actively are trying to ruin society and actively trying to make other people's lives worse. So I see a lot of this in people that I speak to when I try and say to them, like, hey, you know, what are your goals? What are your objectives? What are you trying to do? What do you think about this? What do you think about that? And they say, I don't care. It doesn't matter. And there's just a very nihilistic kind of view around in the world. And then on the other hand, there are plenty of people I meet who probably share the same nihilistic views, but they also actively seeking to cause negative emotions upon people. I'd call it bullying, but it's more like probably that they have just no genuine things happening in their life for excitement. Like, that's a state that I'm in, like, a lot of the time, where I feel upset, but there are different ways to deal with not having any excitement in your life. These people are choosing to actively go out and try and upset people. So, like, the whole kind of instance of trying to troll people. And not just trolling them for the sake of, you know, oh, hey, I just pranked you, it was funny, you know, light-hearted pranking. I mean, like DDoSing people, which is direct denial of service, which is cutting their internet off. So if you talk to someone, hey, have a dialogue with them, get their IP address, and then cut them off from the internet, just because, hey, it's funny to make someone suffer not having access to the internet. And then taking these kind of attacks a step further, this is just over the internet what I witnessed, like people discovering their addresses and then doxing them or getting them swatted, so like sending a SWAT team to their house to attack innocent people. And I mean, to what extent they're innocent is irrelevant in most cases, because it's like nobody's like innocent, pure, completely free of all bad intentions and results and stuff. But most people definitely don't deserve to be attacked, have them like a SWAT team bursting into their house, or to have their address publicly made available on the internet and for them to be attacked. Like, most people don't deserve that to happen to them, but there are plenty of people who are willing to just go out and do this, and they get pleasure from making other people suffer. I don't know why. Like, I've not looked into like psychopathology that much at all, really. It's something that I think is probably terrifying to even think about. But the idea that anyone is capable of doing this, depending on the circumstances that surround their life. So you have to have a pretty shitty life, probably, or bad parents or bad influences around you to make you want to cause unnecessary suffering to other people just for your own enjoyment. I think that's a very sick thing, but it's an increasing number of people who seem to not care about anything as well. But in addition to not caring about anything, they're also actively trying to make other people's lives worse. It's like, fair enough, if you want to say nothing matters, you want to live a meaningless existence up until the point where you die, or even kill yourself, like, you can feel free to do that, but I take issue with the fact that it's such a common and growing thing. Like, I try to talk to people about this, and I try to arrange to do things with people, and I try to say to people, hey, you know, you're so complacent with your lifestyle, like people who are on job seekers allowance, or they get a shitty job and they're not always trying to look for a better job, but they're still complaining about not having enough money, or knowing that they could be let go from their job at any point, but they still end up working it whilst not looking for a better job, or in their spare time just drinking alcohol and saying, fuck it, life, whatever, it doesn't matter, you know, just playing games in their spare time instead of trying to educate themselves or improve their life situation, like simple things like clean your room, or, you know, think about the future and make plans for how to progress, and or how to earn more money, how to ascend in competence hierarchies, how to be more than just someone who exists. But people don't care. Once again, people don't care. I try and say to them, hey, you know, you could be doing better. You could live up to a higher potential than what you're currently doing. They say, I don't want to, or they say, I don't care. And I say that there are people who do. There are obviously people who do. These are the people who end up in the 1%. Surprise, surprise. And then there are people who just don't care at all. And I just can't understand why. And I try and convince them, like, look, you could do so much, you could achieve so much, and they just don't want to. Like, I constantly try to work on projects with people, and they just don't have any interest in pursuing it or continuing it. It's like, oh yeah, I really like that idea. Let's make a game. You know, let's start a website. Let's start a business together. They're into it. And then once they realize that it means that they're going to have to sacrifice their time and energy into doing it, then they decide, oh, I don't want to do it anymore. Because people just don't care enough to make sacrifices in order to, you know, suffer today to make tomorrow better. It's a simple concept. Making a sacrifice now, you're making a bet with the future, so that when you get to that point in the future, the sacrifice that you made, an investment, ends up coming into fruition. And if you live in a lifestyle where that's not a one-off, that's a constant process where you're constantly making sacrifices, you're constantly being rewarded for the sacrifices that you've already made, so therefore your overall quality of life just goes up massively higher. And I can't understand why people don't do it. But then I started looking into my own life and why I don't do it. Because I don't do it. And it's not surprising, because it's like you're already suffering a lot. And it says, why? If you're already suffering, you might as well suffer. You're already suffering, you already know you're going to die. You might as well spend the time that you're suffering doing this. It's like, oh, well, it doesn't matter. Why do it? Why suffer in a different way if it's still suffering? And it's like, it's an unarguable point. Other than you could choose the path of suffering that offers less suffering. And even if it doesn't seem like it will offer less, it probably will offer less. And you can take that path where you can choose between a real miserable life or a slightly less miserable life, but you have to put effort in to get that one. But then some people say, well, the effort's not worth it. And it's like, shit. I guess even people who haven't actually thought about it for ages still think that, or still subconsciously act as if that's the case. And then it's like, that's it, that's the end. People don't care. Well, why should they? and then you can understand why they don't. Because there's no real reward to caring. there's no real reward to sacrifice. I mean, there is an increased number of opportunities and potential successes that you can have if you put effort into learning things, and if you put effort into creating things, you can always increase your chance of getting something back from doing that. But at the same time, you might not get anything back, and you might have just spent time that you could have been using to drink alcohol, you could have been doing drugs, you could have been having sex, you could have been listening to music, you could have been doing things that are more enjoyable in the instant moment than toiling away at something that you don't really enjoy that much. And then you would say, well, my time was justified because I enjoyed my life. And it's really hard to argue with that, because if indulging in luxuries makes the suffering of life better than being rewarded, and you can get by doing that, then why not? I mean, I can see why people do it. The main reason I personally am in conflict is because doing that doesn't feel satisfying enough. And I don't know if anyone else who's in that position also feels the same, but if you live in that kind of lifestyle where you're just indulging yourself one luxury at a time, one after another, constantly living on impulse, and then still think, well, life could be more, and it could be more, but you're not acting on it. It's like, well, because it's effort to act on it, even if you feel bad, even if you feel guilty for not doing it, I feel like that guilt just isn't, the guilt of doing nothing isn't enough to motivate you into doing something. There needs to be a more feasible and more attainable reward available. And I feel like for a lot of people that just isn't the case. Like, for example, getting paid money to do something makes it bearable. Like, in a capitalist society where you understand the value of money and you know what the money can do for you, you feel less disinclined to, like, clean a toilet. If someone said to you, clean this toilet that's all covered in shit and vomit, it's the worst toilet ever, it's fucking disgusting, but if you clean it, I'll give you like £5,000, $5,000. Well, it's like $6,000 or $7,000. £5,000. Let's keep it about the same. You're like, yeah, I'll do it. It's like, you really don't want to be cleaning a toilet, and you wouldn't otherwise clean that toilet if it wasn't in your house. You wouldn't clean it unless they were giving you money, but you understand the value of money is worth more than a little bit of temporary suffering, so you can kind of justify it and get by with that. But I think that in life in general, there aren't enough visible opportunities to really do that. There aren't enough visible rewards for the suffering that you go through. So it's a lot easier to just, pick up a bottle of rum and drink that than it is to look for an opportunity to find some kind of reward that justifies the work that you'd have to put into doing something productive. So then it's a lot easier to just play games, watch YouTube videos, and go to clubs, and do all kinds of things that don't feel productive, that don't really add value to your existence. They just add to your chemical enjoyment. It's like, hey, I'd rather do that than nothing. You'd rather do that than doing nothing. And if you can't see what else to do, like if you can't see these opportunities for positive outcome around you, then of course you're going to do that. And that's another thing I think that Jordan Peterson hits a nail on the head with, is that being vigilant and looking for these things is way different to thinking about them. It's like you can sit and think about what opportunities there are, but it doesn't even compare to being more vigilant and perceptive to what opportunities there can be out there that you can then care about if you can see what there is. Like, you can care about the fact that cleaning the toilet would get you £5,000. You have a goal, you have an understanding of how to get to the goal, and your brain can process that a lot easier than just kind of like, what do I do? If I create something, I might get something back for it. It's too vague, and it's not enough motivation. People who've been in the practice of doing that throughout their whole life probably understand that, and it's no problem to them. But younger people, I think, people that I know and people that I talk to, don't understand that, and I'm only just coming close to understanding that, and I've not even put it into practice. I know for a fact that when I finish a university paper or a college paper and then submit it, that feels good. Finishing it feels good. Doing it doesn't feel good, but finishing it does, and submitting it does. But being in the period of time between getting it submitted and it's not really enough to look forward to finishing it, because you're sort of looking forward to the end. And then once it's submitted, you get a short thrill, but then there's nothing left over. So I think I need that mindset that people get from university and doing their homework is kind of like, I need to do this chore just for the sake of getting it out of the way, and for avoiding detention or for avoiding failing my course, not actually to get anything out of it. Whereas once you start work, you start to get money out of it. Or if you're interested in learning starts to give you knowledge, and you get knowledge out of it, and you can enjoy the process of uncovering things and asking a question, then getting an answer to a question, and then feeling you brain rewarding you for unlocking answers. School doesn't teach that anymore, which is what I'm saying. I think that people don't understand the value of work, the value of putting effort into things, so it's creating a very lazy generation of people who don't do anything. I'm one of those people who hasn't done anything yet, ever, and I don't feel psychologically incentivized to do it through any kind of predetermined mechanism or through any kind of practice. I'm only coming to it through logic and learning, and people saying literally, what like Jordan Peterson would say, for example, in any of his lectures. I'm coming to understand it through that, but not through any experience, because I've never been forced into any experience where I have to work to get something back. I haven't even had to work for my survival. That's one thing. If you don't have to work for your survival, then you really only have to work for your own pleasure and rewards. But if you don't even have to work for that, it really makes the incentive to work and to be good somewhat distanceable, and you can just forget about it, because you can get by without doing anything. And it's a toxic mindset that I want to get out of, because I constantly feel guilty for not doing anything. And I think maybe other people do, but they're just not aware of what to do. They can't see what the opportunities are, and I'm not sure how to see those opportunities. The one great way that Peterson has said in his lectures, once again, I refer to this because it's fucking genius, but I just haven't been able to apply it practically, is that the human brain sees the world as tools and obstacles. Tools, obstacles, and traps. So really, you need, but it only sees those if you have an objective. So your natural objective is to survive, which is pretty much all the time. So anything that helps you survive, or anything that stops you from being able to survive, your brain is sort of calculated around hey, that snake will help me not survive. I will not survive if that snake attacks me. Your brain is right, stay away from that, that's a snake. But your brain sort of, if you're hungry, sees food as an opportunity to survive. It's the food will, help me not starve, which means I won't survive. And these are very fundamental built-in things. But you can go beyond that and say, if you set your objective to be to earn money, and you see money on the floor, you could argue that the mechanism to further your goal of, I want to get this money, picking up the money would add towards that goal, so your brain starts to see the money as a tool towards the goal. Now, you need to have really thought about what it is you want to get, or have a real understanding of what kind of goals and objectives you want to have in order to be able to see the tools that would help you get there. So like I was saying, people can't see the opportunities of what can give them rewards because they're not thinking from a perspective of any kind of final goal. And in general, the trivial goals like being a millionaire and wanting happiness, those kind of don't work as goals because they're way too vague. You need to have a goal that's reasonable, or multiple goals that are reasonably achievable, and then break down step by step what goes into each goal, and then step by step what goes into each goal, and then what goes into each goal, until you're at a point where everything is just something that you do or do not do. Now that's also very difficult because there's an infinite number of things that you could do, an infinite number of things you couldn't do, or you could avoid doing. So I don't know how the fuck you even start to do that, or even how you're supposed to know what it is you want, which is once again something I made another video about recently, but now I'm sort of trying to explain why it's difficult. It's not just me saying like, I don't know what to do. It's, I don't know what to do, and here's why other people don't know what to do, and why other people don't care about it. You know, people don't care because they just haven't had the opportunity to have to care. They don't need to care. I don't, on the other hand, understand why people are actively trying to destroy things. I think it's because they just want to see something interesting happen, and because most of the things that they do in life are boring. There's got to be more to it than that, obviously, and I'm not a psychologist, so I don't know. But from a base level, it seems like they're doing it for their own entertainment, because to them it's entertaining, though it shouldn't be really. I guess it is. I'm unsure about a lot of things, and the more I think about it, the more I realize there's too much to think about. So then I try and be perceptive and try and think about goals, but thinking isn't getting me any closer to any kind of solution. So once again, I have to get back to you on it eventually, but for now, that was my video on why people don't care, because they don't have to. It's frustrating from time to time. Say to people, you know, you could be doing this, you could be doing that. Say to myself, you could be doing this, you could be doing that, but you're not. I'm at least trying, I think, in some part, by making YouTube videos. That feels like something, that feels productive. And by watching YouTube videos, learning, watching lectures, getting on with university work. Even though I finished university, I'm still doing university work. Getting on with personal projects. Well, like I said, the objective of having some form of reward at the end of it isn't clear enough, and it's not feasible enough to really justify the idea. So like writing a book, for example, having to have written a book being the end goal, and the medium in between, the interim to that being you have to write a page a day or whatever, a page at a time, and then for each page you have to write a sentence at a time, and for each sentence you have to write a word at a time. I mean, obviously you're going to come up with like sentences and paragraphs kind of as chunks and then add all the chunks together, but you still got to break it down into what's feasible. However, once I was saying, like, writing out that paragraph doesn't give you anything, as opposed to like something feasible where you're able to visualize what you're going to get. Say, for example, if you're working a job where you get paid by the hour, you're able to visualize at the end of the hour, I will get paid however much money. And so once you get paid that much money at the end of the hour, it's like, oh, okay, now I can visualize what an hour's worth of work will get me, and then I get that. Whereas with something like writing a book, it's like, hey, I don't know what an hour's worth of work is going to get me. I don't even know what a year's worth of work is going to get me. Or if you're writing something like it takes 15 years to write, you don't know what 15 years of work is going to get you. And I think a lot of people don't know what the work is going to get them, or what doing is going to get them. So like, if you don't know what your effort is going to do for you, it's really hard to want to do it, other than someone saying, hey, yeah, if you do this, you'll probably get something out of it. It's like, how the fuck can you trust in that? Like, your parents, if you had decent parents, they would tell you all the time, oh, you do this or do this. But I think a lot of people's parents don't tell them why, or don't really explain enough why, or they just take it for granted why they know that you should do something, and then just assume that their kids are stupid if they don't listen to them. It's like, you should do your work. Like, and it's like the kid says, oh, I don't want to, I don't like it. It's like, it doesn't matter, you have to do it. And the kid says, I don't want to do it though. The parent says, no, you have to. You don't get to say that, you have to do it. Parents aren't really explaining why you have to do it. They say, oh, you have to do it, otherwise you'll get detention, or otherwise you'll fail school. They say you have to do it to avoid a bad thing happening, as opposed to, if you do it, a good thing will happen. And I think that the reward sense, the sense of reward versus the sense of bad things happening, it's a lot easier to motivate people on positive things. I don't know. People say it's a lot easier to motivate on negative things, saying like, hey, if you do this job correctly, you'll get money, which means you won't starve. And not starving is a good motivator. So I don't know. I think if I know that I'm not going to starve, regardless, then it's a good motivator. No, it's a bad motivator if I know that even if I don't do the work, I won't starve. And, you know, even if I don't do the homework, I'll get detention. It's like, oh, well, detention isn't that bad. It's not bad enough. In fact, detention is better than doing the work in some cases. So it's like, really hard to get into that psychological rhythm. And it really is a rhythm. It's like a routine. The routine of doing stuff and being justly rewarded for it, as opposed to just suffering and knowing that you don't have to work in order to suffer. You'll suffer just the same pretty much if you don't work. Now, of course, if you're starving, on the other hand, or if you're reliant on an income in order to survive, you have plenty of motivations. You have fucking plenty of motivations. But for someone in my situation, or people below my age, then it's very easy to see why they don't have any motivation to do anything, because they don't need to do anything in order to survive and exist. But it's also not easy to see why you should do anything good as opposed to just being evil, just being an asshole, being a dick. You can see logically why it makes more sense to be nicer to people, but at the same time, if everyone around you is being nice, if everyone around you is being friendly and being honest, you could go around and tell lies and really take advantage of that. And you could take advantage of all the chumps around you who are being good by being a dick. You could be an asshole and really fuck over everybody. I think that's what a lot of people view the 1% of in capitalist societies. The whole idea of the 1%, the corrupt leaders, they view them as chumps who are taking advantage of the hard-working people. But I don't like the idea that that's not a nice idea, to think that you're being fucked over, and if all you do is be nice, then you become easily susceptible. If you're too nice, you become a pushover. It's like you could be a good-willed person and still be quite an effective force at combating people who are trying to interfere with what you're trying to achieve. So I don't know where the idea comes from that being good and honest would make you a pushover. As long as you're observant and careful, you can avoid being tricked by people who would otherwise be able to take advantage of you. So I think it just takes a bit of courage, and it's not easy for people to just say like, hey, this I'm not gonna get taken advantage by this, because you can't always see it coming, and even if you can, it's it's fucking difficult. Anyway, that's a different topic. I think I've run myself clean on this. People don't care. It's bullshit. I try and send them links to the videos that I'm watching. They don't care about that. They're clearly suffering. They're clearly not satisfied in their life. No one has said to me, hey, it's cool that you want to talk about this, or that you've saying this, but yeah, I'm very content and happy with my life. I don't need that thing very much. Everyone I know is kind of like suffering all the same, but they don't even care to try and do anything about it, which is just baffling to me. But like I said, I explained why. They wouldn't suffer any less if they did put effort in. I just think that at this point I'm tired of it, and I want to try and make a difference in my own life. It's not a bad thing to be selfish or to want your own life to be better, because if your own life's better, you can then start to outsource that and then be a more positive person. And as long as what makes you happy isn't being an asshole, then it's fine. I think as long as you're not causing unnecessary suffering to other people, then make your own self happy and then go out and manifest that to other people. But yeah, people being dicks and assholes, not great. I know plenty of people who are actively trying to cause unnecessary suffering in the world, and then people who are actively careless towards anything at all. But to avoid repeating myself for any longer, until I get a better idea of what's happening and what to do about things, I'm going to end this video. I'm almost out of Lucozade, so that really sucks.